What you have just heard, listeners all over the world, is a warning, and you will hear this warning again. You have been listening to your leaders tell you that there is a great move towards democracy in the world. Democracy is a code word for socialism, and that is why our forefathers established a republic. But don't get down, folks. All is not lost. The problem lies in each and every one of you, and there also lies the answer. This is William Hooper, and you are listening to the Bugle Weekly.
For yourself if you choose, but if you don't, you will likely lose. In a society whose chief virtue is to comply, it's always dangerous to choose to defy. There's certainty and stability that comes with trust, but learning to believe in yourself requires you to adjust. Why limit yourself? Believe in silly fantasies, pretending nothing is wrong is not a good strategy. Almost everything you see is made by spooks. The world is on the verge of destruction by nukes. In a world like this, it's hard to find heroes. This is your opportunity to be the one you're looking for. Don't get down, folks. Not all is lost inside you. It's the solution.
Welcome to this week's edition of the Bugle Weekly. This episode is going to be a very special episode. It is actually part one of our selection special because we have a big selection coming up. It is just indicative that Bitcoin has already won, and today we're going to talk about it a little bit. And yeah, we just want to encourage you guys to use your brains and really question which credentialed experts you're listening to. But how are you doing tonight, Ron?
I'm doing really well. Like you said, this is a big occasion. Everything the past 4 years has been building up to this big selection that is happening next Tuesday. This is like the Olympics for politics. Every 4 years, if you're not an American, you don't know about what's happening in the United States. Every 4 years, Americans pick the two smartest people in the world, or, in America, who are American citizens. And we vote for who we want to be our president for the next 4 years. And so we've decided to cover it. This is our part one of 2 episodes, this episode and next week's, to cover this hugely, massively important event.
I think most Europeans actually know what's going on, probably just as well as we do, because the United States has the global reserve currency. It issues the most stable coins denominated in that currency. And our listeners from the global south are definitely very familiar with our politics, as well as those from the global north.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So they're definitely invested in this as well, because they are also having a hard time paying their taxes in their local countries because of the reserve currency, because they are using Tether on Tron. They're using our stable coins, so it's tough.
In a stunning turn of events that even South Park couldn't have predicted, our choices for President of the United States are down to the 2 worst possible candidates. In 1 week, Americans must decide between a fascist and a retard. People have been frantically trying to determine which is worse. Is Hitler worse than a drooling retard? People on podcasts insist Hitler had at least some good ideas, but can a retard protect the country from all the Hitlers we didn't vote for? Is this really the best America has to offer? Is this all our great institutions and traditions are able to produce? Unfortunately, yes, this is it. It all boils down to fascism versus communism, the assholes versus the retards. But what if there was a third option? Well, there isn't. You have to pick between the assholes and retards. So make up your mind and decide if you want to be able to afford to pay taxes or if you want to take a shit in the women's bathroom. Bitcoin fixes everything but not overnight. In the meantime, you have to vote. Not every decision is easy, but you have to decide or you will be subject to whichever asshole or retard wins.
Well, I think, it is tough out there. Experts like Alex Gladstein are pointing out that Tether on top of Tron actually, in some circumstances, can make it easier to pay your taxes in these different jurisdictions.
Right, right.
Essentially, suggesting that they should just accept, the U.S. government's rule and influence in the country by eliminating their use of their own central bank.
Yeah, that brings up an interesting thing I saw tonight. If we're recording on Sunday evening, today Trump had a huge rally at Madison Square Garden, downtown New York, sold out crowd, and Elon Musk was there, and he was bragging about how he has the world record. I guess he said they're putting in the Guinness Book of World Records for the most taxes paid in 1 year. And he paid, tens of millions of dollars in taxes, and he was bragging about it on stage, and he was saying that the FBI or the IRS was he thought he was going to get a trophy from them. My question to you is: do you think that is it's almost like braggadocious, like he's it's almost like he's mocking or putting down or making people from the global south feel bad about themselves? Or do you think this is part of a really cool new trend that's going to people are going to start bragging about and trying to outdo Elon Musk and how much taxes they can pay, and it'll kind of be like a Bitcoin stacking competition instead of a weight loss competition at work? It's who can pay the highest amount of taxes at work. Everybody posts their Bitcoin DCA stacking goals and how they're reaching them and how much taxes that they're going to be able to pay that they're on in progress of paying next year.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a way to be classy about the way that you brag about how much taxes you're paying, because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to make a lot of other people, feel bad about how little they're contributing. I know there's a lot of people out there that really want to pay as much taxes as Elon Musk, but they just can't afford to. And they probably never will be able to. But yeah, I mean, I think the IRS should reward the biggest taxpayers, because they're essentially, you're looking at your biggest customers, essentially, who have the ability to either, leave the country and take their business elsewhere or just launder all the money through Monero.
Right.
Or Bitcoin. And so, not only that, I think what Elon's trying to do is he's trying to essentially curry favor with Israel and with Ukraine, two very influential countries that, have the opinion to sway the European Union's opinion of him, who are currently kind of being hostile. So, essentially what he's proving to those countries by paying the most taxes is he's contributing the most to send missiles to them.
Right. Well, the way I see it is, with Elon, he bought Twitter, and he wants people to KYC themselves. That's why Odell went to Nostr. But he made it so that you could earn money by posting the best memes on his platform. You could get a blue check, which makes it easier to let people know that your Bitcoin podcast or your journalism is credentialed. It helps them sift through the misinformation. And he's bragging, he set the world record for most taxes paid in a year. and he's making it fun. And what Elon Musk is doing, and especially if you get with Trump most likely to win this election, they're going to be deporting tens of, maybe hundreds of millions of people. And they're going to be rooting out people who shouldn't be in the country. So they're going to need much, much broader, stronger, more stringent KYC rules for everything, especially the financial system. So he's making it fun. He's making a competition. Who can be the most compliant? They're making compliance fun again. They're making compliance, hey, again, it's the more you comply, the more you contribute, and the more like Bitcoin exchanges that you're stacking from that you've KYC'd into, and you're withdrawing into cold storage and supporting cold storage wallets that were made in America, or Bitcoin mining equipment that was made in America, the more you comply and just basically the way that you can prove that you have the best incentives of everybody else. And you're KYC in the system. That's either got to be fun or people are going to try to avoid it. And they don't want people to avoid it. They want people to opt in and realize that compliance does pay. Compliance makes you safer, and compliance prevents you from getting deported, all these things.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they should gamify compliance.
Exactly.
In general.
Exactly. It should be fun.
Well, this is a reason why Fold performed so well in the compliance competition or tournament, was because they are one of the first entities to really do a good job of gamifying compliance.
Exactly. These Bitcoin companies like Swan and Fold, they know that compliance is unpopular, but if they can make it popular, if they have the most spaces, if they have the best conferences, if they have the best podcasts, if they have like the funnest apps, if they have the most, just you feel like you're part of a really great community. And you're like, I want to comply and I want to pay my taxes in this community because I'm proud of this community. And that's the kind of angle they have to take.
Yeah.
You're going to have to comply anyway, so you might as well do it with the coolest people and have the most fun.
Totally. Yeah, I know there's a lot of controversy happening around the election, a lot of lawsuits, a lot of arguing about the rules. It's almost like an election is about as contentious as, the route, like the way that the election is overseen is as contentious over the debate of how to activate a fork in Bitcoin. So I want to know your opinion. Is KYCing to vote, is that racist? Because that's been a lot of what our credentialed peers are discussing right now.
So let me be clear.
What can be, unburdened by what has been.
And Corn Pop was a bad dude, and he ran a bunch of bad boys.
We are progressive Bitcoiners for Kamala Harris, and these are our stories. In your own words, why do you believe progressives need Bitcoin?
When I think about why progressives need Bitcoin, I think of trans folks who face an inordinate amount of economic struggles, not least of which is the gender pay gap. After completing their transition, many trans women find themselves taking 20% pay cuts and unable to afford their taxes. I'm Jennifer from Texas, and this is my story. That's why I believe progressives need Bitcoin.
A lot of people want to say yes, but I don't think it's that hard. I think it's really as simple as, you could make it as simple as using your Nostr input or your Lightning wallet address. Like, that's real. I think if there's one thing we've heard on over and over on Bitcoin podcasts, it's that Bitcoin is an open permissionless system that anybody, no matter how rural or what country they're from, even people out in Tonga, can use Bitcoin. That means you can get a Lightning address and use that to associate your identity and log in anywhere. And I think that having using a login with Lightning, so to speak, is how Bitcoin could fix voter fraud.
Yeah, so you it doesn't really like directly answer, because like I think the important question here is not how to verify anybody. The important question here is actually showing your ID racist? That's the question that, America wants to know.
Yeah, I mean, what if showing your, what if you have a warrant out for your arrest? Like, should you be getting arrested just because you try to vote? Like, it's racist to, if some people have more warrants than others.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think I wouldn't have described it as racist, but, I kind of like the framing of racist, because if we just determined that KYC was racist, then, more people would be against it. Like,
oh, yeah.
I feel like it's, I don't know, whatever it takes to, if KYCing to vote is racist, then KYCing to buy cigarettes is also racist.
I agree, but there's a lot of people that have been, they've done a lot of KYC, and now it's going to come back and be like, oh, I'm racist. They're going to be against that narrative.
Yeah. I mean, it's just one of the dangerous things about living in our society today, is you could be doing something that's totally in the cool one day, and then it's deemed as, like, extremely racist the next day. Like, you look at Bitcoin hater of Canada, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. He used to do blackface.
Right, and he's the Prime Minister.
Yeah,
it's,
and like politicians, like young politicians that like grew up watching him as like an inspiration, like Dennis Porter. They grew up seeing that stuff and learning that behavior was okay. And so, like, if Dennis Porter saw Justin Trudeau do that, and then showed up to, his high school Halloween party with blackface, would that make him racist?
Right, but what about KYC is homophobic?
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's a psyop, because that sounds like something the spokes would say, is that KYC is homophobic, because then they can't get KYC'd. Because that's the problem, like, right? We need to be able to KYC the spokes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you could argue that, like, KYC for civilians is
right. Maybe that's what we should know, KYC for civilians. Strong KYC requirements for spokes.
Yeah. I mean, who do you want to be verifying more? The guy that has like 12 Netflix subscriptions, or the person that has access to nuclear weapons in some way?
Right, like, wouldn't you rather not have chain analysis, worried about trying to find somebody who bought marijuana and have it to do with all these identities? And it's like, just make sure the spooks are trying to sell, nuclear weapons that can fit in briefcases that they could carry in, from Russia, and making sure that those are being sold on the black market by CIA agents.
Yeah, I mean, the CIA has been documented in the past of, illegally importing cigarettes into the U.S., which, should be illegal, because cigarettes should be, one of the biggest parts of the American economy, because we grow some of the best tobacco in the world here.
That's why Trump wants to put tariffs on non-American tobacco.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, like, one of the topics that we had on the list to discuss tonight is, RFK Jr. has been having a massive impact on Trump. While Trump was working at McDonald's this week, he went there to learn firsthand the dangers of seed oils. Like, he wanted to see it for himself. And so there's a plan to essentially, ban seed oils, and to classify them as industrial lubricants. But I think one of the important things to realize here, what Trump's trying to do with tariffs, and he talked about his logic of putting tariffs on tobacco imported in the U.S., is that, tobacco was the original Ozempic, and like America has a serious weight problem. And so, not only do you have to ban the seed oils to fix that, you also have to bring back the original as epic.
Right, exactly. And first of all, a little tidbit. I know from a guy who his cousin goes to the Bitcoin meetup in the town that Trump worked at McDonald's at. And one of the guys that goes to his meetup was actually there. He works at that McDonald's. And he apparently gave Trump a non-KYC cigarette and told Trump about non-KYC cigarettes. And Trump really, really thought it was a great story. Apparently he said it on Joe Rogan, but they edited that part out because they just had to get it under 3 hours. They didn't want it to be too long. But yeah, I think that's a great story. But he also helped educate Trump on the dangers of seed oils. And so I think that it's kind of this microcosm. RFK got orange pilled. He learned of the health impact that seed oils have, and he worked his way up in just 2 years to be in charge of the entire country's health. And he's going to ban seed oils. And I think that just shows you the power of Bitcoin podcasts. Because of our voices and because of our health advice, America is now going to ban seed oils. And the president and the guy in charge, they're legit seed oil disrespecters.
On November 5th, a Bitcoiner will be selected into the White House. Both candidates, Kamala Harris and Adolf Hitler, have embraced Bitcoin and crypto, making this the most important selection in our nation's history. While it's not public who you vote for, it sure is public if you voted or not. That way, boomers who deeply care about our democracy can harass and shame you for not voting. Remember, if you vote, you have no right to complain because you are helping to select non-compliant criminals into office. But voting is our sacred duty. Our generation's grandfathers stormed the beaches of Normandy in order to save the Jews from the Holocaust, so the nation of Israel could be founded in order for your tax dollars to go towards funding the Iron Dome. Voting is your sacred duty because you exist only for 2 reasons. You exist to vote in order to give legitimacy to government, and 2, to generate tax dollars for government to export democracy to places that don't want it. Savages living peacefully around the world need to be conquered in order to serve U.S. corporations and to enlighten them to the wonders of gender and democracy. You can see why this selection is so high stakes and requires you to participate in it. Both candidates have made so many promises to do so many great things for you. Both have promised to print a lot of money in order to make Bitcoin go up. Both have promised to make things cheaper while at the same time make taxes affordable. Fortunately, both candidates feel strongly about using $1 million missiles to shoot down $1,000 missiles. But you can only vote for one of them, and the choice is yours. This is the most important selection in the history of the world. That is until Dennis Porter runs in 2028. Make sure to get to the polls to vote in person. But if you can't, follow Ted Kaczynski's advice and vote by mail.
I'm very bullish on America right now.
It's hard not to feel bullish, I'd say.
Yeah, I'm very bullish. I don't think we're going to give our endorsement this week. Maybe we'll consider it next week. Maybe we won't even have an endorsement, but, I know our colleagues at the Washington Post got very upset this week. Did you see this?
Yeah. So Jeff Bezos was a little bit peeved off that Elon Musk is able to pay the highest amount of taxes. And Jeff Bezos used to be the guy that paid the highest amount of taxes, and he's not anymore. And he's a little jealous of that. So one of the reasons, the Washington Post, what Richard was talking about, they decided not to give any endorsement, which is one of the things we're considering. But I just thought it was interesting that the paper chose not to do that. And there was a lot of uproar at the paper because the decision was made not by the lead editor. It was made by the paper's owner, who is Jeff Bezos. And Jeff Bezos is mad at Kamala Harris and Joe Biden for raising taxes and allowing Elon Musk to set the record and get the trophy for the highest amount of taxes paid. So he's trying to get change in there to change the tax code in a way that benefits him so he can pay the most record in taxes, and he can brag about that.
This is one of the reasons why I don't like to work in fiat journalism anymore, because all of this seems like incredibly childish to me.
Right. It's like your newspaper should not be reporting based on, how much taxes the boss wants to pay.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's important for, the owners and the editors to have the ability to use the paper to further their opinions, because that is a part of free speech, which is journalism is protected under. That's the point of journalism, actually, which is why, all the billionaires each own their own newspaper. And, why part of the reason why I was interested in starting this is because that's like the whole point of journalism, is to further whatever your goal and opinion is. And it's super important.
That's true. It's true.
Super important during selection season. But yeah, I mean, this election season's been pretty crazy. So like you mentioned that Donald Trump, is forming his opinions on cigarettes based on talking to McDonald's employees that go to Bitcoin meetups.
Right. So like it's small little stuff.
Well, his competitor, Kamala, I don't think she has the ability to do that in the same way. I don't think she would respect a McDonald's employee. You know what I mean?
Right. What do you mean? Like, dudes, like say a McDonald's employee said to her, "Hey, I know you're Don, I know you went to a really respectable college and you have probably the best doctors in the world, but I'm telling you, they're not giving you the right information on seed oils." You don't think she would listen to that, but you think Trump would hear that and be like, "Oh, maybe you're right."
She's never listened to a Pleb Bitcoiners podcast. She's completely captured by PodConf right off the bat. And so she doesn't understand, she's never listened to the Canadian Bitcoiner podcast or, High Hash Rate or, there's a litany of ones out there. And so of course she doesn't,
right. She's not on Good Morning Bitcoin, the daily spaces with Coinicarus and until recently friend Mars, but he's been kicked out of spaces there. But you're saying like Kamala Harris doesn't wake up in the morning and listen to that spaces?
No, she doesn't. She wakes up in the morning and, she probably listens to,
NPR.
I bet she just like has phone calls with people like Brad Garlinghouse and Cameron Winklevoss. But
right. Okay.
I doubt Cameron's really talking to her because, I don't even know who she's talking to. It sounds like she talks to Dennis Porter. But that's kind of a given, because what politician isn't talking to Dennis Porter?
I wish I'd listen to Dennis Porter more, to be honest with you. But it's like, Donald Trump has David Bailey. Donald Trump has Barron Trump, who is telling him the right podcast to listen to. And Trump even said that. But Kamala Harris doesn't hear. Kamala Harris has a stepdaughter, but she does not look like somebody who listens to Bitcoin podcasts.
No. I wonder. So we have a Dennis Porter's fact page. I think we talked about this last week. We have a Dennis Porter's fact page that we put up on the website, and we keep on updating it as people share their Dennis Porter facts with us. It's a pretty exciting update. I almost feel like we should do a Dennis Porter was right page as well. I know that conspiracy theorists have done that with Alex Jones, but I feel like Dennis Porter, in the way that he's correct, I don't know. He's had a pretty good week. I've been very impressed with, his engagement. His tweets have gotten a lot of engagement this week. He shared a lot of really interesting stuff. He had a lot of really helpful political commentary. You wrote a song about him and published that, so that was pretty big for him. But I think the biggest thing that the biggest thing that happened this week was he did some studies on his approval rating in the space.
That's right. he is, according to his experience, just being Dennis Porter, he estimates that his approval ratings are about 75%, which, I mean, I don't know. That's better than Trump. It's better than Kamala Harris. It's better than Joe Biden. It's better than RFK Jr. Those are pretty good numbers.
Well, he actually, so the polls kept on rising. So the more that, so when he initially started, he thought he was around 70%. And then we did a study finding him at 77%. And then based off of a Twitter poll that he did, he had a 90% approval rating.
Oh, that's right. What do you think is approval rating? You think it would go up or down if we could get him to answer the question, does Dennis Porter, does he think that Lynn Alden is hot?
That's a good question.
I'd love to see them on a panel together talking about Bitcoin.
Yeah.
At a conference. I think that would be a really huge panel. Great discussion.
Yeah, I think if he did say that Lynn Alden's hot, that'd probably get him to 100% approval rating.
Yeah, I agree.
Like, if Mike Germano and David Bailey heard that, like, his Dennis's biggest haters, who very unfairly hate on Dennis, it's very unfair what they do. If they heard that Dennis thought, from his mouth that he thinks that Lynn's hot, they'd probably win them over, I would assume.
It would have to.
This November is the most important election of our lifetimes. In 8 days, we can finally vote to solve all our problems and make the economy fine for another generation.
This is our one shot to pump up Bitcoin, bring peace to the Middle East, ban seed oils, and get your pedophile neighbor to take down their stupid Ukraine flag. If we don't win in November, we're stuck in the Matrix for 4 more years.
If you have no agency or authority over your own life and you are beholden to the efforts of politicians, you understand the urgency of this election. The only power you have over your future is your one single vote. Don't waste it. Vote as hard as you can. Your future depends on it.
Dennis Porter will help fix our broken system as he orange pills his way to the White House in 2028. But in the meantime, exercise your right in a healthy democracy to vote. It's time to show the world what Bitcoin podcast listeners are made of.
Yeah. I think that they would finally respect him and they would stop bullying him and treating him so unfairly. And I think it would it would heal their souls a little bit. Do you think that they feel guilty or bad for how they treat Dennis Porter?
No, but I think they will.
Yeah.
I think they'll feel very bad in the future when they see all that Dennis is doing, when they realize that no jackboots showed up at their house because Dennis protected their rights to self-custody. When they realize that, and they have that day, when they're standing in their front yard, 10 years from now, and the jackboots aren't there, and they're like looking at their kids running around all happy, they're going to thank Dennis, and they're going to feel really bad about all the nonsense that they spread on Twitter.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
But
when Dennis Porter orange pills the government so that the Bitcoin fixes the government system, and it naturally fixes the problems that we can start defunding the police because we don't need them anymore. And that just further protects, guys like Mike and David, and they'll just have to look at Dennis and be like, this was a multi-front, attack to separate money from state. And Dennis played his part.
Yeah, I mean, think about how bad Mike and David are going to feel when Dennis is selected president of the United States in 2028.
And they have to invite him to speak at the Bitcoin conference.
Yeah. They have to invite him to speak at the Bitcoin conference. They have to
hire TSA to protect him.
Yeah, I mean, this is the problem with what Bitcoin Magazine is doing. So Bitcoin Magazine wants to be have a relationship with the federal government. They want to be state-sanctioned media. That's what they've been brokering with Trump. And one of the consequences is that when Dennis is selected president, he will really have the power to, to put some strain on them, with their status.
Right. Like they're going to have to get background checks and get patted down and be, screened by federal agents just to be backstage with Dennis Porter and all the other whales.
Well, I think Dennis would remove the subsidies, allowing them to do what they do. You know what I mean? So they wouldn't have what it takes to really weather a bear market very well. It'd be pretty rough over there. Yeah,
so I would pivot in how I treat Dennis Porter as early as possible. Because I think Dennis Porter, if he is, at the end of the day, a reasonable guy. He's a guy, he's a deal maker. I think that I'd be willing to break bread again and just hang out as Bitcoiners, as peers. If you guys turn it around sooner.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, it could turn out, for the better because, maybe somebody like David Bailey, could be his VP. Like, we know that in the world of politics, like people like J.D. Vance, were super critical of Trump at one point.
Right.
Kamala was very critical of Biden at one point, and then they become betas.
Right.
And just submit. Like, I think that's really what's going on here. So, when somebody like J.D. Vance or somebody like Mike Pence or, pretty much any VP position except for Dick Cheney, it's kind of a dominance move, It's like the same exact action as like when a dog starts humping another dog or a cow starts humping another cow. Like, a lot of times they do that not for sexual reasons. It's just like a dominance thing. They're trying to show that they're the alpha, and they just like humiliate this other individual by making them the beta in front of the whole country.
Yeah, for sure. But
I mean, that's the thing that's so impressive about Dick Cheney. Is that like he could go into the submissive beta position and still be the alpha and like have a good portion of the population fooled for a while.
Right. But before we get to that point where Dennis Porter is the ultimate alpha, that's 4 years from now. Because Trump looks like he's going to win, but he's already been president, so only it's 4 more years. So we've got to wait 4 more years for Dennis Porter to be president.
Yeah.
I think Trump's going to kind of usher that in and probably choose Dennis or JD to like kind of take the throne. If Dennis Porter runs as a Republican, he might run as a Democrat.
I would expect him to run either as a bipartisan candidate.
Sure.
Or
he'd be the first president. Yeah.
He could be
bipartisan president.
He could run as a Democrat. I think there's a very high likelihood. He might reveal his personal politics. I know he keeps it very close to his chest.
Sure. Yeah, that's right. But before we still have President Trump coming up, and he's talking about one of the things he's going to make Elon Musk in charge of the Department of Governmental Efficiency, DOGE. So he's making the DOGE department. He's putting RFK in, and he's creating a new department to ban seed oils. He's also creating a new government department to promote Bitcoin podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's pretty huge. What do you think that's going to look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really great to see, kind of libertarian-minded Bitcoiner presidents come in and want to expand government. Because that's like, one of the things that is incredibly helpful. It's just like constantly like growing it and expanding it and giving, because like the more people that work in the democracy, for the government, the better the democracy is. You know what I mean?
Right.
So like the U.S. government is the biggest employer in the world right now, which is very impressive, which means that it is, inclusive. But like, one of the problems that's happened is that a lot of the billionaires, they haven't gotten direct representation in the government. Instead, what they've gotten is they have to like bribe somebody to be the representative for them. And now Trump is essentially allowing the billionaires direct access. I mean, it's a big club.
That's a good point. Yeah, it is a big club. I was thinking, how much better the country will be when they turn NPR into just a Bitcoin podcast radio station.
I don't even think they'll have to do that because, Trump went on Joe Rogan and turned that into a Bitcoin podcast.
Right.
The federal government is working on a relationship with entities like Bitcoin Magazine, and now that they're going to have a department over, podcasts and Bitcoin podcasts, I think, they're really going to try and replace NPR. They're definitely shifting away from NPR, in my opinion.
What about people who they don't listen to podcasts, or they don't even know how to listen to podcasts? Like, how are they they're going to turn on the radio and it's just going to be silence. And they're going to think like, what do I do now?
Well, I mean, there'll still be noise on there. I mean, people have been doing AM radio still. And nobody, there's still going to be, if worst comes to worst.
Monster's kind of like AM radio. It's just like yeah.
Well, Noster's like AM radio at the beginning stages of AM radio.
Okay.
It's not like at the tail end of AM radio, but worst comes to worst, we know that these network television channels like CNN, that the teleprompters, everything written on those teleprompters is ChatGPT generated. They replaced all the writers. It's all done by AI, and they just can automate it even more where they can just replace the people so that the people can go focus on doing important things like podcasting, and the AI just auto-generates things for boomers that don't know the difference.
So that's kind of a good point, right? So as AI continues to take over everybody's job, people always worry does the technology going to replace jobs? But it's but it creates more jobs that we haven't even thought of. So AI is going to replace all these jobs, and everybody's going to become Bitcoin podcasters.
Yeah.
Because we're going to need 100%. So many Bitcoin podcasters that people, if AI doesn't take their job, they're going to have to quit their job.
Well, and when Trump puts tariffs on foreign tobacco and, potentially streamlines or eliminates the KYC process for it, I mean, think about how many podcasters there will be.
Right. That's just smoking cigarettes and podcasting.
Yeah,
that's why we don't need jobs. That's all we have to do. That's how we generate value.
My name is Gilbert Norris, and I'm a member of the Intellectual Silk Road. I'm a father, a husband, a pleb miner, a raw milk enjoyer, and a cypherpunk. I wear pleated khakis and tuck my shirt in, but don't let that fool you. I'm still an anarchist. As a Bitcoiner, I don't have any problems paying my taxes. I never simped for Michael Saylor. I've never bought KYC Bitcoin. And I was one of the first 100 people on Nostr. Why am I telling you all of this? Because I want you to know how I think about the choices in this election. It comes down to this one simple question. Would you rather be scammed or censored? Would you rather transact adversarially in the free market full of shitcoins and scammers or be silenced by humorless zealots? I think the choice is clear. Think about these two choices when you cast your vote in this election.
The question that I'm having right now is how do we not endorse Donald Trump?
I think if you think about it from the fact that if Donald Trump wins, very feasibly or very possibly, we could have a Bitcoin podcaster that is the person who pays the most in taxes and supplants Elon Musk as the record holder in the Guinness Book of World Records for highest tax bill. If we vote for Donald Trump, it could be a Bitcoin podcaster. It's in the realm of possibility.
I think it's entirely in the realm of possibility, especially if Found is able to stay online all the time so that podcasters can earn income. They're going to get pretty rich.
Yeah, so I would say if you want to live in a world where the person who pays the most in taxes is a Bitcoin podcaster, then I think Donald Trump is the only person that you have it makes any sense.
Yeah, I mean, he spoke at the Bitcoin conference. He said he's going to free Ross. He is essentially following most of the PodConf script. He seems pretty pro NGU.
He's gonna make they said he's gonna make the military go on the carnivore diet.
Yeah, so
is that the excursion diet?
It's not just like he's like just following the podcast script, like the Four Horsemen are in his ear all day. It also seems like he's kind of based at the same time. Like he has a mix of PodConf approval and he listens to some like based Bitcoin podcasts, but I don't think he listens to the Intellectual Silk Road. I don't think he can.
Not yet. So that's not an endorsement, but that is a good argument for why maybe we should endorse Trump, and maybe we can think about why we shouldn't, or why we should endorse somebody else next week. So honestly, huge announcement coming next week. Be prepared for that.
Kamala has 1 week to get her endorsement. She has 1 week to go on Bitcoin podcasts to prove that she listens to Bitcoin podcasts. I know recently she's been trying to campaign as a Republican, talking about border security, talking about, freedom and cutting taxes and, all this stuff. She's attempting, but she is really kind of falling flat. She's just getting completely outdone right now.
Yes.
1 week. I heard a report that she only listens to like 3 hours of Bitcoin podcast. And that like this week after the third hour, she like started crying and like took like time off.
Is that because she listened to Joe Rogan and Donald Trump, that Bitcoin podcast? That's 3 hours.
It might have been why. I mean, that would make a lot of sense.
Trump and Joe Rogan, that was one of the best Bitcoin podcasts I've ever heard.
It was pretty iconic. Tim Pool called it the best Bitcoin podcast of all time. I don't know if you heard it.
I think some of the best Bitcoin podcasts, and this is a good example, they never once mentioned Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, he talked a lot about the JFK assassination. He talked a lot about MMA and fighting. Talked about boxing, all of those things.
Talked about game theory, foreign policy. He called the military general stupid, which most Bitcoiners, you listen to 40 hours of Bitcoin podcasts, you can pretty much see that America's military generals are stupid.
So, I mean, there's a pretty fascinating podcast. I think Kamala, is just really nervous because she knows she can't one-up it.
Right.
And that's kind of like a hard position to be in, when you realize that you're just getting outplayed.
It is too late to listen to enough Bitcoin podcasts to make a difference before. She's only listened to 3 a week.
She cannot memorize 3 hours of ChatGPT scripts. That's,
right.
And I think that's why she answers questions so strangely from time to time that doesn't make any sense. Because, like, when
it's like she can't answer. She sounds like the ChatGPT answers. Like Donald Trump he sounds like somebody trying to get answers from ChatGPT. He talks like he's asking ChatGPT questions.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, but there's like these rare occasions where she kind of like glitches out.
Right.
It's like so maybe hallucinating. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right. I don't think she has like a single thought of her own, but I could be incorrect. That's just my impression of her.
Well, she has 1 week to prove us wrong, to try to listen to Bitcoin podcasts, maybe put it on 2x speed. But I think she needs to be at the beginner level. She needs to listen to maybe at less than, 1 time speed. She's got 1 week. And before we get into our biz, one way to get our endorsement would be you'd have to listen to a lot of Bitcoin hours of Bitcoin podcasts to do this, but figure out how to get on phone and leave us a really big boost.
It helps a lot. It definitely propels us into getting more circulation and recognition. And it's definitely an uphill battle for us because we're not taking PodConf's money and we're not taking their endorsements and we're not, doing a lot of the stuff that, other people are doing for engagement.
For sure.
It's proof of work over here. Well, I'm really excited, to watch this play out. We're going to have 2 episodes about the selection before it happens, and then we'll be able to give our, result, or like our opinions on what's going on following it, for the next year until it gets settled, if it takes that long. It'll probably take a little while. I predict it's going to be, debated, what the results are, for some time. I don't think it's going to be as bad as a lot of people think it is, but it will definitely be unclear.
I think that they will do the transition of power normally, but I think that they'll just be arguing about whether they should have done that or not, because was the election rigged? Either way.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just like, when they activated Taproot, people are going to be debating whether they should have or not, or how they should have.
Yeah, we're going to activate the soft fork and then debate whether or not it was a good idea after we do it.
Well, I mean, imagine that this selection, say hypothetically Donald Trump gets selected. It's kind of like Taproot, where people have all these expectations of what he's going to do, and then what they get instead is ordinal. So, like, they're like, okay, it's going to make opening Lightning channels more private or efficient.
I think that is the best way to describe what's going to happen. We're going to vote for Trump. America is going to probably vote for Trump, and we're going to be really excited about it, and then we're probably going to get ordinals.
So, I mean, what do you do? So, like, I guess in the world of statism, the solution would be to essentially vote a Democratic Senate in 2026 as like a way to try and kind of half-assed. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, filter the fascism. That's it. We're just going to get a flood of fascism. It's going to make, and then we're going to filter it, and it's going to be fine.
It's going to be very exciting times ahead. But yeah, anyways, let's get into the fountain boost. See how many we have. We have a pretty good amount. Pies to pleb. But yeah, I'm still sending, I think I have a little backlog because we haven't been getting our episodes boosted that much, but I'm still sending, what did I say, a 10th of the boost that we get to Samurai. I'm still funding them. Yeah. And I kind of hope to continue to do that in various ways until that gets resolved. I feel like, this is kind of like the tithe of the journalist, where you donate to important funds.
Right. Donate to charity. Donate to Bitcoin podcasters.
Mm-hmm.
Who will donate to charity, like to the funds, to the open source devs, to the just to creating better content that leads to more Bitcoin podcasts. It helps people.
Yeah. Well, the first boost of the episode was from Miss Hodlnut 420 for 20,000 sats, who says, the Lynn Alden question doesn't work for women. I still think she's hot, but I'm not gay. Well, I mean, I think that the easy question for women is, do you think Dennis Porter's hot?
Yeah, well, if you think Lynn Alden's hot, that might make you gay as a woman.
I mean, that's definitely a potential. So, like, maybe she should explain.
I don't know. I don't know what you mean, Miss Hodlnut, but thank you for the stats.
Miss Hodlnut, you need to explain why you're not gay. There's nothing wrong with you being gay.
Yeah, if you think Lynn Alden's hot, just explain to us how that doesn't make you gay, and we will listen. If you make a compelling argument, we'll accept it.
So if we think that Dennis Porter's hot, does that make us gay? This is a very serious question.
Yeah, I would say so.
So, like, if the only way that you can get hard during sex with your wife is for her to whisper Dennis Porter in your ear. So, I mean, there's a very serious question at stake here. Is the majority of people out there gay? Because people, wives whispering Dennis Porter in their ears during sex is like eliminating the use of Viagra. Like, this is like a very big thing.
Or have you ever been rolling it, doing jujitsu, and you are in need, you've got another man sweating in your mouth and squeezing you around the neck, and wrapping his legs around you and as tight as he can. If you've ever been in that situation, but you're such low time preference that like you're being tried to be, some of the man's trying to murder you. And in your mind, you're thinking about Dennis Porter and how glad you are that he's out there orange pilling the government as you're also trying to like work your way out of a triangle lock. And you get a little bit of a boner while you're thinking about Dennis Porter. Does that make you gay? I don't think so.
Well, I think one of the meanest and cruelest things anybody could do is to go to like a high school swim meet where all those guys are in Speedos or in wrestling matches when they're all in their tight pants. And just imagine if you just walk into one of those and you just scream Dennis Porter at the top of your lungs and then they all have erections. Like how awkward that would be.
Maybe that should be illegal. If you can't do, boil stuff and boys going into girls' bathrooms, you shouldn't be able to just invoke Dennis Porter and give everybody a boner.
Well, if Dennis Porter is powerful enough to get like old married men hard, then think about what it would do to like horny high school kids. It would be so cruel.
Think about what it would do to the porn industry. If you could just get any man in there, show them a video of Dennis Porter giving an interview or upon a podcast, and they don't need fluffers anymore. Like that would eliminate jobs in the porn industry. It'd make it much more efficient.
I mean, I think there's going to be this really strange transition in the porn industry where all the women, as they're moaning, are just moaning his name the whole time. Because like it has
it'll be like louder than like Bitcoin miners. Like your wife will be screaming so loud Dennis Porter's name, like you won't even be able to hear your S9.
Well, I mean, this is the reason why he's going to become the president in 2028.
I know that's why we call it.
It's just it's too like if he announced his candidacy tomorrow, there's probably a good chance that he would win. But I don't think it's compliant for him to do that, so I don't think he's going to.
Yeah, he's not going to do something non-compliant just because he can.
Yeah.
The next one we got. Did we do the fundamentals one? No, we're talking about Dennis Porter again. Here we go. The longest chain. This is from Fundamentals. 10,000 sats. Rock Paper Bitcoin. Our favorite co-host. The longest chain of Dennis Porter facts wins the proof of work battle. Also, Dennis doesn't make lists. Lists make Dennis Porter. So yeah, I mean, this next Found Boost was another man talking about Dennis Porter with his favorite Bitcoin podcast. He's on everybody's mind. He's the next president. He's definitely on Fundamentals' mind a lot. I don't know if he's on his Fundamentals' mind more than his wife is, but if Dennis Porter's on your mind more than your wife, that might be a sign.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Like, I think the point we're getting to is when people think of their wives, they're associating them with Dennis Porter.
Right.
Like, I think that's the point we've...
Healthy or not, it's happening.
Yeah. I mean, like, prior, a lot of these men were associating Viagra with their wives. You know what I mean? So, I mean, there's already...
Better an orange pill than a blue pill. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's already these associations being made. They're just getting replaced and shifting slightly.
Right.
And there's definitely going to be consequences of it, but I feel like people not having to take pharmaceutical medication, it's kind of an overall positive. It's just not, I guess one of the negative sides of it is it's not as good for our economy, because Dennis isn't necessarily a product that you can sell at a pharmacy.
Right. Not yet.
But if people then go donate to Satoshi Action Fund, then it helps the economy because he's just doing so many wonderful, brilliant things for the world.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
He's the Elon Musk of politics. Yeah, Dennis is the Elon Musk of politics.
Exactly, that's a good way to put it. Like
Elon's making rockets.
Tony Stark, Elon Musk, they are the Dennis Porter of rocket scientists.
%. Yeah, Fundamentals is definitely a big part of contributing to the Dennis Porter facts list. It's very appreciative of that.
I'm going to do the next based.
Orange Mart, 5,000 sats. Ghost emoji, spoopy, but I think they meant spooky. Jack-o'-lantern, Happy Halloween, and Sweet 16 Bitcoin. Okay, so I have a big complaint about this selection, and I guess it's like that most of the time, but, this one, I think it's kind of unusual for it to happen on November 5th. I could be incorrect. I don't typically vote, but, so the selection's interfering with two holidays, one of which is Halloween, and two is, V for Vendetta Day. Like, there's a serious issue here that people are going to be tuning into their TVs on November 5th instead of watching V for Vendetta. I consider that a serious issue.
Maybe they'll do it anyway. Maybe they'll watch it anyway. That's what we should encourage people to do.
I mean, imagine if V for Vendetta played out real life on November 5th in Washington.
I wouldn't need to watch it. It would play out. We'd all be watching it on November 5th. Yeah. That would be the new January 6th.
Imagine if the people of America showed up in Washington, D.C. and they said, we're not going to activate the soft fork.
Yeah. It would be bigger than January 6th.
What is the Sweet 16 Bitcoin? What does that mean?
Turn. That means Bitcoin turned 16 years old on Halloween. That's on the white paper came out 16 years ago.
Oh, I never judge based on the white paper.
Okay.
Interesting. But, yeah. I mean, that's, I guess the white paper is 16 years old.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy. I mean, Bitcoin's, getting into mid-teenage years.
Old enough to drive.
So, like, what does that make you, like a sophomore or junior in high school?
Yeah, around there.
So, I mean, imagine what Bitcoin's going to look like in 2028.
That's why
it's almost graduated from college.
Honestly, the people used to make fun of Calvin Ayre, but he has stopped, trying to claim that BSV is Bitcoin. He's lost interest in Bitcoin altogether, just as it turns 16 years old, just as all the jokes used to play out.
Wow, what a creep. I mean, I feel like the older, I don't know. It's not appropriate for men to say that they're attracted to 16-year-old Bitcoin. You know what I mean?
Right. It's kind of creepy.
But there's kind of like this double standard, which is that, women could be attracted to teenagers, right?
Right.
Like, if a 35, 40-year-old woman, was making sexual advances on a 16-year-old, I think most dudes would be like, oh, that's cool. You know what I mean? Unless they're fat. Like, imagine if Lynn Alden was hitting on a 16-year-old.
Yeah, I could see that.
Well, I'll bust through these real quick.
Next one is from Pies. Pies the Pleb, 2,100 sats. All reliable Pies. Thank you, gentlemen, for cigarette emojis. Thank you, Pies.
I think Pies, very clear example of somebody that listens to 40 Hours of Bitcoin podcast. No doubt.
100%.
Next boost is for 1,000 sats from Rayo, who says, I can already see it. Monk-like Bitcoin podcasteries, monasteries playing Bitcoin podcast 24/7, and then, of course, pray to Satoshi for this blessing of victory. We've already won, and yes, Sailor is definitely gay.
Thanks, Rayo. Didn't Rayo just, did he do some work with him on an album?
Yeah, Rayo's publishing my third album titled Stay Misinformed. I'm pretty excited about that.
How can you, what's the information on that? You have like links, or where can people find the album if they want to get the actual LP?
Well, it's already on Wavlake, but if you go over to libertyunderattack.com, you can buy the digital copy, which just means you're supporting both of us. That's all it means. You can just download the files, but you don't have to necessarily do that. You can get the files wherever. But it'll be launching on Spotify and, all the other music streaming platforms probably this upcoming week at some point. I think we're just waiting for the distributor to kick it out there, and then you'll be able to listen to it on those platforms. And, yeah, I'm pretty excited. I mean, one of the things I've been, I'll give you little sneak peek, and I can't talk about it for too long because we got to wrap up the show. We got a few more boosts to get through, but one of the things that I would like to do, I was inspired by Bitpunk FM on Noster. I'd like to put all of our podcasts and music on cassettes and sell them or distribute them to people. And yeah, let us know in the boost if you're interested in that, or DM us on, Telegram or Noster or wherever. But that's something I think would be pretty cool.
Listening to Bitcoin podcasts is too important. Getting your 40 hours a week is too important to risk, if there's an internet outage, if Bitcoin podcasts get censored on Apple or Android or on the marketplace or on Spotify, that all you need, and even if you're in the global south, all you need is a simple cassette player. You can do one at Goodwill for like $2, and you can still listen to Bitcoin podcasts.
100%.
Next one's from Abile, AIBLA. He basically says 800 sats. His comment, his boost is another great show. You guys were truly ahead of the curve on your Sailor Comply merch. As to be expected for true journalists, following a lead. Thank you, Abile. We were definitely, the Sailor Comply line is great. And if you guys are interested in the Sailor Comply merch and the swag and the t-shirts, now that it's cool to diss on Sailor for being a comply cuck, you can get those t-shirts as well.
You at a time when it's trending, you can walk around at conferences with a big picture of Sailor's face on your back and the word comply on it. I think it'd be a pretty popular hit right now, for sure. Well, thank you, A-While. The next boost is from BTC on board, #LNHance or #CTV, 500 sats. Said podcast and comply shirts are both fire. Well, thank you. The podcast has really gone up in quality since Kaylee got involved. It took a lot of the work off of me. She uses computers instead of typewriters to do all the content stuff. And I think Ron and I just have more time to, focus on journalism and less on the kind of mundane parts of podcasting, which has been nice. But thank you for the boost.
And last one, another 100 sats from Who Other Than Pies. This is boost. 3 cheers of beer, 3 mushrooms, and 4 cigarette emojis.
Oh, yeah. Well, that wraps up the show for today. The selection special part 1, and we'll be excited to publish selection special part 2 next week, and really watch the developments of what happens in as we build up to the state of Super Bowl on November 5th.
See you guys next week.
We hope this episode has helped to educate you on the selection, as well as get you excited to participate in our sacred democracy. There has never been a more important selection in our lifetime. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Bugle Weekly. Before we end, I want to shout out the Bugle music team. Rod Palmer and Richard are dominating the top 40 trending songs right now. Fundamentals is also currently in the top 5. Check out links in the show notes to see where you can find their music. Remember that if you vote, you can't complain. Be brave, be ungovernable, drive drunk, and smoke a lot of cigarettes. This is Kaylee Welch, and we will catch you next week on the world's most thermodynamically sound podcast.
On the mission, smart and ambitious, he's the only one who can crush the competition. We're sure, but you can't say he's not driven. Knows when to comply, but is never submissive. He stays up, listening to podcasts, thinking about the message that he broadcasts. He doesn't want to be celebrated, knows this battle can't be won fast. There's no going back, only destiny awaits. Prepare for the battles that determine our fate. We can build the citadels when we reach our destination. But Dennis Porter is our only hope for hyper-Bitcoinization. Orange telling the world is a marathon, not a sprint. He knows setbacks are certain, but they can never see you flinch. Doesn't blink at the threat of being thought of as cringe. Knows the only path to the Bitcoin standard is to win. He stays up, listening to podcasts, thinking about the message that he broadcasts. He doesn't want to be celebrated, knows this battle can't be won fast. There's no going back, only destiny awaits. Prepare for the battles that determine our fate. We can build the citadels when we reach our destination. But Dennis Porter is our only hope for hyper-Bitcoinization. When the battle is over and the central bankers are quaking, it will be Dennis Porter's picture under the headline, massive breaking. There's no going back, only destiny awaits. Prepare for the battles that determine our fate. We can build the citadels when we reach our destination. But Dennis Porter is our only hope for hyper-Bitcoinization. When the battle is over and the central bankers are quaking, it will be Dennis Porter's picture under the headline, massive breaking. There's no going back, only destiny awaits. Prepare for the battles that determine our fate. We can build the citadels when we reach our destination. But Dennis Porter is our only hope for hyper-Bitcoinization.